Hey everybody, I'm your host Spencer Andrews, aka DJ Dre, and you're in the mix with Glen Zoeteweij from the Netherlands, producer. Glenn, thank you for being on the show. How are you?
I'm just doing fine. Thank you very much.
How did you get started in the music industry?
Well, that's quite some time ago. I think I was about 16 years old when I started, trying to produce music. It was with a software called Mod Edit. It was tracker software. And with a couple of friends, we used to make, some kind of GABA hardcore kind of tracks. We sampled CDs and started making music that way. 4 channels and started banging out tracks.
What are some of the biggest differences you've seen in the business right now?
Well, what I mostly found out was a couple of years ago, I started, saying, hey, I've been producing music for quite some time now, hobby-wise, so not for a profession, but I want to take it to a next level. And then when the online music game began, growing and growing, and the platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and so started to get traction, it became a bit more easy, I think, to get to label and start releasing music because in the past labels were publishing CDs or maybe vinyls and stuff like that, and they were a bit more maybe towards quality or maybe a bit more on the budget. And
Right.
now there are a lot more smaller labels, so it's a bit more easy, I guess, to get music out.
Now, when you do your vocals, are you recording something in home, tweaking it, and then going into a studio? How are you working that out?
Well, the vocals in my most of my tracks are taken from, I think, sample packs.
Okay.
So I don't have vocalists coming in. I mostly have some sample packs which could suit a track, and then I would be going through these samples and finding the right one with the right track, I guess.
Right.
I don't have
Right.
a setup in my own home studio
Right.
for recording vocals. I don't have a right mic like that. So yeah, my home studio is just based around instruments, mixer, some effects and stuff like that. But I don't have any vocal booth setup.
Right. Do you feel that it would be better for you to get out of your home studio and go into a professional studio? A lot of people that are producing have set up a home studio. Even with the lowest level of equipment, you can get the job done pretty decently. Do you feel you'd rather be in a professional studio or you're pretty comfortable in your home studio?
Well, I'm at the moment I'm pretty pretty how do you say that? Pretty happy with my home studio setup.
Right.
I have been moving from Rotterdam to the countryside, and I have a special room now set up, which is better with acoustics. I think I it can compare to a professional studio, obviously. Then it would be even better.
Right.
But I'm really confident that it's good enough at the moment to get my tracks good enough.
Right.
I also have some software to I don't know if you know it, Reference Studio
Right.
that can well get out the bad spots in the
The
room
imperfections.
through the software. Yeah.
Right.
So
Um,
so I'm happy at the moment, but obviously a professional studio maybe you can get even more better results. I don't know. I haven't been there yet in that
right.
spot. So yeah.
What's your working style like? For me, because I
Yeah.
think too much. So I can have a track, and by the time I'm done with it, I can have like 50 overlays on it, which is just outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever feel like you do something and then you want to add more and you just don't know when to stop? Or how is that style of putting something together for you? Do you come up with
Yeah,
a thought in your head? Go ahead and tell me.
yeah, sure. I've recognized a bit of that as well because it's tricky not to you said it, not to be able to finish a track, to always think, well, maybe I can add in more, or maybe I have to make things different.
Right.
I think sometimes you just have to sit back, enjoy the track, and say, well, it's done. But
Right.
mostly, well, it's a different approach every time I start on my Ableton setup,
Right.
because I mostly use Ableton to make the tracks. But it can be a bass line which you start with. You find a nice groove, and then you think, well, I'll add on some rhythms and maybe a vocal sample, or maybe some arpeggiators or stuff like that. But it can also be a cool, maybe a drum groove sample, for
Right.
example, which you find in a sample pack. And there you start from that one. And
Right.
you start mostly on the rhythm section and then start adding in the instruments.
I've sat down and you got everything laid out. You want, let's just
Hmm.
say, hi hats, you want tom, and you want kick, and
Hmm.
like you said, you start out with your drum line more or less, and but it's just a track is never done, as most people say, a track is never done. Um,
It can be a really tricky, I guess. Yeah, you keep on adding, keep on tweaking those little bits. Sometimes, yeah, you just have to say, I think it's enough. It's
right.
it's done. It's okay, because otherwise you won't get anything finished,
How
because
do
it
you?
will all end up on your hard drive like
Right.
unfinished projects.
Eventually, have to just say enough's enough, and that's
Yeah.
it. How do you go
Hmm.
about getting your feedback? How do you go about doing a track and saying, I need someone to hear this to tell me what they think? How do you go
Hmm.
about getting that feedback?
I have a couple of friends who are into making music as well, so sometimes I plug it with them. But well, sometimes I just finish a track, leave it for a bit, then add it to my phone, and I drive to my work, my regular work, and I put it on my car stereo
And you
to check
listen
if the
to it.
mix is right, and to you have heard it, well, 1,000 times. You know the drill, I guess.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get maybe a bit bored, or you don't find the track that refreshing anymore. But if you leave it for a bit and then revisit the track and try to play it on a different kind of setup, it can sound different, or it can sound fresh again. And then, well, with some feedback from the right kind of friends who are critical,
Right.
who do listen in a different way, then it's enough, I guess. You have to be confident in yourself, because it came about in a creative process,
Right. Right.
and it's really personal, I guess. So, well, like you say, many friends will just say, "Oh, it's fine, it's great." Then you would get maybe a professional feedback from a fellow DJ. That would be nice, I guess. But I don't have that many contacts in that direction. So,
And then you have your
hmm,
friends that make music, and those are the
yeah.
ones you need to go to. What genre of music are you producing right now? What would you call it?
It's really depends on my mood. It can be tech house kind of stuff, so danceable. It can be more down tempo, a bit loungy, Ibiza kind of productions, with more acoustic kind of instruments like Rhodes pianos or saxophones or a bit of guitar.
Right.
And most recently, since I've moved, I've been going through all my vinyls, which I had obviously stacked in Rotterdam as well. But I've been going through those records to see, well, what do I have to maybe sell or get rid of, and what will I keep? I've been rediscovering ambient music as well. So I've been buying some new music as well, and some oldies like guys like Brian Eno, Klaus Schulze as well. Well, really the electronic pioneers from Europe, I guess. And I've been making some of those that down tempo ambient stuff lately as well. So a bit more beatless music. Really, it depends on my mood. Sometimes it's just more four to the floor, dance floor kind of stuff,
Right.
house, techno, bit in between.
What do you think about comparing maybe the American music to what you're doing?
Oh well, I've been influenced by, I guess, Detroit techno quite a bit. I find it really interesting, an interesting genre, and an interesting take on the music. also Chicago kind of sound. I like that really, really much as well. Chicago house. I also have some interest in hip hop and rap and also. So I've been listening to quite some hip hop in the late '90s, I guess,
Right, yeah.
when I was studying in Rotterdam.
The 90s hip hop was the best hip hop for us.
Mhm.
Hip hop today has gotten horrible. What is the music like in the Netherlands?
Yeah, it's really depends on what you like because we do have just like Dutch folk music,
Right.
but like trance has been obviously one of the big export products of the last few years. Like guys like Ferry Corsten, Tiesto, who lives in the States right now. But I used to work for a small dance magazine, and I have interviewed Tiesto when he was on the verge of breaking through within the Netherlands and Europe. And well, I think 5 years later, or maybe 10 years later, he crossed the Pacific to the United States, and now he lives well a beautiful life there, and
Yeah.
he has well had so many hits and so many more like yeah the chart like tracks. But then he was mainly into trance at that point of his career.
Right.
These guys have done a lot for I guess Dutch dance music.
Have you had a
Uh,
failure in doing what you do and learn from it?
well, I think maybe it was procrastinating in getting things done, or maybe even taking it seriously,
Right.
or really trying to say, well, I want to focus on that point. I want to make something out of this music. I want to get it out. I want to get serious. I really want to do something with it. I think maybe I waited too long with that point. When I had that thought, I tried to do some courses. I've been with Lessons in Life. That's with a guy called Camille Daman. He also releases music, and I've done some training with DJ S True, was a techno DJ from Rotterdam, which I contacted. So I did some lessons on that, get some feedback on how to produce, how to make get things better,
Right.
to learn from it, to develop myself, and really, I do have a day job, but I said, well, I can find some spare time. I can take some days off and really get myself into the studio, really focus and work a whole day with a whole weekend attached to it and finish stuff, really finish stuff, and really focus on getting the job done and well then also finding the courage in getting in contact with labels
Right.
and not being afraid to get the feedback. No, it's not for our label, or it's not good enough, or oh, well,
Everyone hates to be rejected,
sure,
but it's
yeah,
also good to have that. Some people are a little too what we call cocky. People that just think, "Wow, you
I'm the
know,
greatest.
yeah, I'm the best." What you're saying is you wanted to not have a hobby as a producer. You want to be a producer, and you felt, hey, you know what? It's time to take it serious, and I can appreciate that. If if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
For somebody who makes well music and follows his feeling in making the tracks, in making music, and he hopes, I hope that people like my music
And not
and
being
it gives
swayed to do music the way other people want it. I mean,
definitely,
I think
definitely
that's one of
doing
the
your own thing, making your own sound. Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's one of the problems when you come into with a label. If you're
Mhm.
doing music one way, they'll sit down and tell you, okay, with your music, it's good. We
Mhm.
need you to do it a little more this way or that way, and then
Yeah,
eventually,
recognizable.
what you do is you don't become you anymore. You become basically making music for a label. I know a lot of artists ended
Mhm.
up just not happy anymore because they weren't doing what they wanted.
I've found some labels which I do release through, well, regularly. I don't say every couple of months, but let's say one or two releases every year. Uh, it was a label from the UK called Capital Heaven, and there was also a label from Italy, Blessed Cross, who did some releases for me
Oh, great.
that were single tracks, and Capital Heaven in the UK was were EPs with two, three tracks, and they all responded positively to the tracks. Well, they sound really great, and you don't have to change anything. So that was really great, and these guys appreciate you for what you are and
Right.
for what you're making.
It has to be a
It's good
great
to have
feeling to
also,
feel that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. It was so nice to see people being positive about it. And it was also with my debut with a Belgian label, with the guy who's also been, well, a really long time into music.
Right.
And he has his own label as well. And well, I released through a compilation, which was my first track, which I released. And he said, "Oh, it's so good. Don't you have anything laying around which is, well, kind of similar in that direction? Would you like to do an album?" Well, I
Wow.
said, I don't have 10 tracks at this point. Maybe I have three, four. He said, well, maybe you can try to find 6 to 8 tracks.
Right.
And I think I ended up with I think 10,
Wow.
somewhere around there. And he said, well, I like 9. There's one it's a bit off. I don't find it within the the sound of all the rest of the tracks, so maybe we can leave that one out. I
Right.
said, okay, cool. I'll make an intro. I'll make an outro. I'll try to make a story. And he was really enthusiastic. He said, well, we released the album, and then that was my debut album.
Wow.
I was like, wow, how is that
Congratulations.
possible? But yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. So that was my debut, and then from there on, I went, well, discovering what kind of music I could do more, and what just went along with, like I said, with the feeling I have at the moment, and I start creating. Yeah.
That's not bad. Do you have a musical background?
Well, a little bit. I used to, when I was with my parents, I think I was about 10 to 12, I did some organ lessons. So I played the electronic organ. So that, and I was on a music school as well, but I was really basic, I guess, basic
Right.
music theory. And then from there on, I went to playing the organ for a couple of years until you become a teenager and don't find it very cool.
Yeah.
You're discovering going out and being with friends and drinking a beer and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I was more into that scene, and then I also discovered dance music. I guess it
Right.
was new beat at that moment. I went to Belgium. I lived in the south of the Netherlands, so I went to Belgium a lot. There was a lot of clubs there. So yeah, so that's when how I ended up liking electronic music and starting producing as well.
Can you talk about Capital Heaven? Cause
Oh, the label from the UK.
right.
Yeah, these guys, it's owned by guys who also do producing as well, and I think they have been in the progressive house spectrum and have done a lot of tracks themselves and also remixes for really famous UK artists, like I think guys like John Digweed, um, and also other artists.
Right.
And I found the label through, I think, net, labelbase.net. It's an online database of music labels, which you can
Oh wow.
search and into genres and stuff like that. So if you want to find hip hop labels, you can check on the hip hop labels and find how big they are or how.
I sit in the chair for 8. I've been known to go a lot more than 8, but I've been in the chair sometimes for 8, 10 hours just researching
Mhm,
music, trying to
mhm.
find something that isn't in print. For me, I mean, I try to play music that everybody else isn't playing. Also, you're the founder of Lunar Outpost Records,
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
and how long ago did that happen for you?
Well, I was thinking about, I do have some tracks laying around which don't fit the right label, and I couldn't find the right label to release it on. And I said, well, due to the fact that everything has gone digital, and I also researched that part as well, how can I release music? So I was in contact with the guy where I did the debut album.
Right.
I said to him, I said, well, how do you master your music? And that's also there are a lot of online platforms with good uh, studio engineers who do a good mastering technique. Uh, I also have some contacts in the UK with a guy who who does mastering of tracks as well. So I did have some entrances there to get the music to the right level and able to well to release it. And then I said to the guy from Belgium, I said, "How do you release music? How does that work?" And he said, "Well, there are online platforms which you can well upload all your music, and you can check out which platforms you want to release on, which streaming platforms, stuff like that." So also I started researching that and adding up how much it would cost to do a release, and then
Right.
I said, "Well, that's pretty good. I can manage that. I can pay for that. That's okay. Let's try that." So I did some designing on the label logo and started uploading stuff like that. And then I ended up releasing music on Beatport.
What would be your advice for people that are just trying to start out or even are in the middle of what you're doing?
Mhm. Well, like I said, keep focus, get in touch with the right people for feedback, like you said, and not only your friends, but people who know music, who maybe play music as well, who have seen what which tracks work and which tracks don't, which tracks get picked up and which ones don't. And also, well, maybe you just want to release music and you don't want to make it your, how do you say that, your life or your main income. Then I would say just go for it because due to the fact that everything is digital and everything has become uh, much more easy, I guess, to release music. Just try to do it and read about it and get in touch with people who have done it, like me,
Right.
and say, well, how do I do that? And how can you advise me, or how can I do this? But it has become less difficult than in the past because there are a lot more labels out there. There are a lot more technical possibilities out there to release music. So yeah.
But now, compared to many years ago, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have,
Mhm.
a group,
Sure.
a group with 1.5K listeners that you could say, "I'm doing this. What do I do?"
Mhm.
You know, um,
Yeah.
how did you go about putting together your hardware? Uh, was it trial and error, or how did you go about building that?
The
uh,
studio.
Yeah, studio. How did you go about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was also well, obviously it's sometimes it's money, but sometimes it's not. If you're really creative, you can start off with a really simple setup. And some of the artists out there who are big right now have started really small and were so creative in well going about a small studio setup. So well, when I started making music, like I said, I started out with tracker software. From there on, I tried Cubase. I then moved over to Reason, so it was really focused on software. But in my Cubase period, I also bought I think it was a Yamaha synthesizer and a Akai drum machine. I also have a reel-to-reel here in the studio as well, a GX 210D by Akai,
I saw that.
golden only.
Would you admit that because, we've come so far with technology? For instance, if you
Oh yeah.
do a track, you can put some
Mm.
kind of like vinyl scratch on it, and people like that.
Oh yeah.
Uh, would you agree that even maybe not having the best of equipment can give you that sound that you've been looking for?
Definitely, definitely. If you are a bit into software, you can emulate so much stuff right now with plugins, VSTs, and stuff like that. It's amazing. You wouldn't have dreamed of this, I guess, 25 years ago.
No, no,
It was all
no.
about getting a 909 or an 808
Yes,
or a 303. I do have a 303 still in my studio, an original one.
but people did
But
a lot
that
with
was
it.
one of the first. Yeah, I think the 303 was one of the first things I bought in hardware after I had the Yamaha and the XR10 of Akai, the drum machine sold because I was really into acid house at that moment.
Right.
So
And
I
you
have
need that.
kept that one. And I've had other synthesizers as well, but I sometimes you sell stuff and sometimes you buy stuff.
Right.
Right now I do have uh, a Novation a controller keyboard to control Ableton. I have a mixer by Allen and Heath. I have a Behringer DeepMind 6 synthesizer, which well, really works like the Uno 106, which I had, but I sold it in
Right.
the past. It
If
depends.
if you have a significant other, they just stare at you and say, "Do you really need that?"
Yeah, maybe I'm fortunate, but she does say that sometimes. But if she's well, she's also supportive in saying, well, if you really want to do this and you really like making music, go ahead, just do it. And
Well,
that's
that's
why
great.
I ended up in the new house building the studio and working room. It was a garage for a car, but we put in a couple of walls and a door, and I put in the right acoustics. And then I had my own room within the house to make the music. So in the end, if she goes to bed at night, I can make music and nobody else would hear about it, sleep and be safe. Yeah,
I think
really
every
great.
producer, every DJ just dreams of that. Um, Glenn, we're getting to the end, and before I let you
Cool.
go, is there anything that
Yeah.
you want to promote?
Oh, well, sure. If people like the story and the stuff I told, you can check out obviously the label Lunar Outpost Records. It's on all the digital platforms, so you can check it there. It would be a bit more down tempo-y kind of stuff, but also there is some more danceable house, tech house kind of stuff as well. And obviously the labels, like I said, Capital Heaven. If you're into a bit of progressive house, progressive trance kind of stuff, it's a really nice label. I'm on there as well, but there are many, many more artists out there as well. The Blessed Cross guys from Italy are doing really interesting releases right now, not only by me, but by also many new artists who also make, well, melodic techno, but sometimes it's a bit more, well, artisty type of releases who almost do a complete album. So it's really interesting what they're doing right now. And obviously, if you like my tracks, try to find Space Native. That's me out there with well, my music. So yeah, I think it's that. And like I said, if you really like doing music, just go for it and make the best out of it.
Glenn, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and this is the man to check out.
Most welcome, most welcome. I really enjoyed the interview, Spencer. It was
Thank
really
you.
nice talking to you.